Hope this year is better for everyone than last year. We have a quorum, so we can actually start the meeting. Jeremy, are you gonna?
Do you want to, do the time, the date, and then just the who is here, at least from the committee? If you want, I can do that. It's up to you.
Yeah, you can do that if you want. Yeah.
So tell me, Ray, because I am recording.
Oh, okay. Then go ahead. Yeah.
So we have, so this is the Housing Committee, Community Board 11 in the Bronx, and we have the chair present, Hazel Mura, the co-chair, Richard Reynoso, and Christine Culpepper de Ruiz. And I think Malcolm Gray is also in. I'm making all the committee members co-hosts in case there's an issue. And then I'll let you take it from here, Hazel. One committee member could not be here tonight, but that's 5 committee members, 4 out of 5. And correct me if I'm wrong, that is Malcolm Gray that is here, right, Malcolm?
Yeah, I see him.
Sorry, yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So it's all yours, Hazel.
Jeremy, did you forget something?
Right? January, did I say the date? January 5th, 2023.
No, a community member to this committee.
Excuse me, Bob?
And I'm a community member to this committee?
You're a community member, yes, but not a committee member, to my knowledge.
I'm going to turn my camera off because I don't know what is going on with it. That's not me. I love technology, but I also hate it. So last year was a pretty exciting year for us. We had a lot of issues to address, and we did finally get the letter out to regarding the Fortune Society. I hope everyone was able to get a copy of it. As soon as we get a response from anybody, we will let everybody know. I don't believe we've gotten anything back. Is that right, Jeremy?
Say again?
We haven't gotten anything back from our council person regarding the Jacoby issue.
Oh, have we heard about an update on Just Home project? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, there's no update to my knowledge. A letter was sent on behalf of the board to the HHC board as well as a council member. I don't know when they're going to meet publicly, the HHC board, to discuss the issue. And I just want to be clear on this other issue, just so in case it comes up again. So Bob, you are not a committee member. You're a member of the public, right? I just want to make that clear because
that's not what went on in the past.
Well, I don't have until I have anything in writing. Say?
Well, I haven't gotten anything in writing about it. So that's something that I need to speak to my committee about and to whoever's going to be the chair. So as soon as I know, I will definitely let you know. There's been a little bit of a confusion about it, so I need to actually talk to everyone and see what's going on.
That's not how it's done. Thank you.
Okay. So as soon as, Jeremy, do you know if HHC is going to have a public hearing about that?
So as I know, they will. They'll have a public meeting about it.
Okay.
I asked them to keep us abreast of the situation. And then separately, you do have the Department of Buildings. Your guest is here tonight. I do see HPD. Winnie and Ted are here. And then we do have, it looks like, the chief of staff for Assembly Members of Carl's office.
Yes, I know. I saw them. Thank you. Thank you so much. So as soon as we hear back from HAC about that public hearing, we will definitely let the community know. I don't know if it's going to be in person or in Zoom. I have no information. As always, they're not getting back to us. So, but as soon as they do, we will make that information available to everybody. And I'm so happy that we do have someone here from the New York City Department of Building. We, as you know, we have a lot of construction going on throughout the community, and I just wanted them to come and maybe give us a little information about the construction or whatever they know, and also to just let us know what the process is for this construction, because I work in housing, so I kind of know what the process is, but I want everybody else to get a better sense of what happens and what these people have to go through to get permits and everything. So just so you'll be educated, and because the more you know, the better for us. So I want to introduce Luke. I am not going to attempt your last name because I don't want to butcher it. So Luke, go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name's Luke Zabados. I'm actually not the liaison assigned to your community board. That is Nairobi Lazo Hayes. She is one of our new hires in the community engagement unit, but I'm filling in for her as she gets trained and up to speed on all of the community engagement issues. But today, one thing that you pointed out is getting clarity on some of the permitting process. And I think one of the best ways people can get clarity is to know how to look at a lot of public documents. So that's what I was hoping to do today. And I'm always available you can interrupt right in the chat to take your questions, because this is really your committee meeting. So I can go through both of these public portals that have a lot of information. They tell you what's happening in the community even before it happens. So I think those are two good starting points, but then I'm always eager to see how else we can illuminate what DOB does. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll be on our way. Just one moment. If I can figure out how to do that.
While you're doing that, I just want to welcome Ted back from he's from HPD. Ted and I go back a long ways. He's been with HPD for a very long time. He's very knowledgeable, and I want to just say hi.
Okay, do you see, this is Nairobi's contact info. She's your designated liaison. Do you see that right now?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
great. So I'm going to minus that out. And do you see the DOB Now public portal?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is our new system. I think it got released in around 2014 to 2016, but we've been redeveloping this. And this is kind of the modern system that is very easy, or a lot easier for our applicants, owners, filing professionals, and the public to view. So while you might be familiar with DOB's public documents as a way for you to get information, they're really the way in which private applicants contact and communicate with the Department of Buildings in order to get their job filings. So what you're viewing on DOB Now and DOB and BIS, which is the Building Information Systems, these are the actual databases that are linked to the filing process. So updates that we have in our system, it's going to automatically update here. So DOB Now is our new one, and we've got a few different formats of DOB Now. And we can go through some of these. They're a little bit in the weeds, but there's just a ton of information here. So the first thing I'll do is draw your attention to the homepage. DOB Now can be found by going to the New York City Department of Buildings main website. You can scroll down to quick links and you get to DOB Now. So that's what we're looking at here. And you can search a property profile by address, block and lot, building identification number, job number. You know, if you see something on the a construction fence, you can take a photo of it and search it here. But one thing that is especially interesting for community boards often is building on my block. So as you probably know, one step in the approval process and just construction process in general for specific types of developments like new buildings, certain types of alterations, is a zoning challenge and documenting what the proposed zoning is and allowing the public to challenge it. So DOB does our own zoning analysis, but this allows you to look at it. As we know, the zoning rules in New York City can get very complicated, and we always appreciate the transparency that we can offer, and also the information and expertise that the community board has as well. So you just click on that zoning challenge, and you can search by community board. So this is talked to us 4 years ago. This would have been not here. This is brand new. So you can search by community board. You can search whether it's open to challenge. Let's look at that. So there's one building. We even have objections to it, and there's 15 more days. So there's a lot of data here. You can look up the diagram itself, which has been submitted to the DOB, and if you're if you know what you're questioning, you can include that in your challenge. So these challenges are usually going to be reviewed based on zoning code. So if there's something in the zoning resolution that says, hey, you have to have a certain size rear yard, or you can't build this type of floor area or this amount of floor area, these are the types of things that we're going to be attentive to. Some developments are not appreciated or are not received well, and but there are certain things that if the zoning allows it, then it might still get built, even if you challenge it based on any aesthetic time limit. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. So your challenges have to be specific, include citations, everything like that. And while and there are a lot of resources for learning the zoning resolution, connecting with the DCP zoning help desk. That's a great resource. So let's search a property. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of how this system works. I'm going to use a Manhattan address. Oh, that's block and lot. I'm going to use a Manhattan address just because this is the building that DOB is located in, and but I'm happy to do any address. So 280 Broadway. This building is a landmark. It's very old, and it's got a lot of filings. So whenever you search a property like this, you're going to see the building identification number. That's a handy number that you can use in a couple of different portals on DOB's website. At the top here, these are really going to be reserved for new projects or new submissions or submissions in the future. A building like 280 Broadway, which has been around for, I don't know, at least 80 years, isn't going to have a lot of data, right, in this portal. But, and you see that we link to our building information system. But in the future, you know, new buildings are going to be located up here. You've got your alternate addresses, some of your basic property information, landmark status, what community board it's in, tax lot, and some other interesting areas like tidal wetlands map. I usually just scroll down to the bottom here, and the bread and butter of DOB Now is in build, job filings. This is where you're going to see permits, you're going to get details on how many units the new construction is proposed to have, when do they file, all these different types of things. So you can see this building is used as a test for DOB, but let's click on one of these. Some of these are legitimate. So this was signed off. It was modified in August. LAA, that's a limited alteration application. That's usually for like plumbing types of work. So whenever you click that little button over here, view, pops up with more information, and you can collapse these as you wish. Work permit is always going to be in this and in this kind of banner. You can print it, and this is what you should see. If I think, I mean, I'm not sure if a toilet replacement would necessitate posting this permit on the front of the building, but for certain types of permits, you will see this exact document posted on the front of the building. So this is really interesting to go through. A lot of times you're going to have interesting documents, like for new buildings, you can find the foundation examinations in this documents tab. This is also where, you know, that front page that I showed you with the zoning diagram. Well, all those zoning diagrams are pulling from this space on each plan, on each job submission. So with certain new buildings, you'll have a lot more data here. And so that's generally how to find a permit. You can see what's going on. You can organize it. Let's say you're only looking for electrical work. You can sort this by typing the work type in this box. Let's say you want something that was a couple of years ago. You can change how this is sorted to ascending versus descending. So this is the first filing that they had. So that's kind of your basic how to find construction permits that are happening now. There's also this cranes filing, which will include filings for cranes, but that's a little less regular than other filings. So another great question that we get asked all the time is, why is there scaffolding up on this building? And a lot of times it can seem like a mystery, but DOB Now is a great way to find answers to those questions. So what you can do is you go into their safety compliance filings, and you can check out their facade filings. So as many people know, Local Law 11 is what requires the sidewalk sheds to be installed if there's any kind of safety concerns with the facade, and that's where all of these are cataloged. I'm not sure why it's taking so long to load. What buildings are exempt from this? So now don't quote me, but I believe it's, if the building is more than 6 floors, you are required to have Local Law 11. If it's less than 6 floors, then you're not. There might be other exemptions, but I think it's that cutoff, six floors. So let's look at a different job or maybe even a different property database. So that's kind of a really rough overview of DOB Now. A lot of information. You can also find elevator compliance filings. There's a lot of elevators in this building, and you can like go into these and get some. This has to be done yearly. Sometimes there are elevators that are have defects, but they're accepted, and that's a big point of contention. So these are all things that you can explore. You can get details on who inspected the elevator or the facade. And so that kind of covers a little bit of DOB Now. Let's move on to Biz, which has filings that are older. It has a current. This is where exactly everything, all the violations, complaints are going to be filed. And it also includes any filings that, Biz includes filings that were started in the old system, but are still active. But before I go to that, let me just kind of get back to the meeting to see if you guys have any questions or any kind of clarifying things before I go any further.
Hi, I have a question, and I don't know if this is the right time, but I'll throw it out there for now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so as far as the DOB monthly enforcement bulletins, how do those relate to like this website, these filings, in terms of timing? Like, are they current or are they things that are, decided months later, or, are they projects that are in progress? And is that website up to date as far as the monthly enforcement filings, the reports?
Okay. Just one question. Can anybody see my camera or no? Is that
We can
disabled?
see you if
Okay.
if that's what you mean.
I can see you, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so monthly enforcement, if you're working for an elected or community board, I believe you should be receiving weekly notifications for new building construction. When you say monthly, I'm wondering what notifications you're referring to.
So I came across, I just went down a rabbit hole today, and I came across a part of the DOB where it has these monthly enforcement bulletins where it gives you by borough, like, such and such property was fined $30,000 for this violation. And, it's by borough, and it gives you like the amount, who it was that was fined.
Right. So I'll share my screen because we have this online. So this may not be exhaustive. So I'd have to check back internally to see if it is. But from my experience, let me just, we haven't issued this since July, and we've definitely had enforcement actions taken since July. I think these are just general major enforcement actions. There is not an exhaustive list. It's just kind of giving a spotlight on what types of things we're enforcing. I'm not sure why we haven't added anything since July. That's something that I can take back to the team and see what they say.
Thank you for that, because actually my concern, I noticed that there wasn't anything since July, and I was wondering, why.
Right. And one thing that we're going to get into on this building information system, the BIS system, is where all of these enforcement actions are shown. So if you've complained to something 2 months ago on 311 and you see that, hey, they're still operating this deli as, I don't know, a nail salon and it's not allowed under zoning, you can check up on BIS to see what exactly the status of the complaint is, and then from there decide should I elevate this to community engagement liaisons at DOB? Should I elevate this to my elected official, et cetera, et cetera?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I utilize the resources of the DOB now and the Biz website nearly weekly. Is there any plan to restructure the DOB Now website itself? Because it's very unfriendly in terms of its utilization from a mobile, like desktop. It seems fine. It looks actually pretty good. But from a mobile standpoint, which is like how most people are dealing with on the site construction matters, it's nearly impenetrable to utilize. Like for example, I'm looking at it right now, the DOB now you can't even see the bin number on the site on the when you utilize the mobile. So it's like it's the layers that are meant for the desktop are like they're overlayered upon each other on the mobile, and it makes it impossible.
Thanks so much for that question. I don't do the IT or um, uh, that. I'm not in that division, but that's something that I can elevate and see. I know that we're kind of at a time where we're rethinking a lot of how we engage or how a lot of our DOB Now systems operate. So that's really great feedback, and I think I've experienced that myself too.
I appreciate it.
Hi, Luke. I have a question for you.
Mhm.
I'm curious as to like how you navigate finding information on investigations into accidents on job sites. Is there a way to do that, or is DOB tracking or putting up information about investigations?
So that is a very good question. It it really depends. So a lot of our actually most of our enforcement actions are publicly available. So if there was some kind of incident at a site and we shut the site down, you're going to see a stop work order on that site, and that's going to show on Biz this database that we're about to get into. It's going to show that, oh, this is a referral from the FDNY because there was a fire or somebody had a worker incident injuring themselves. That's why they shut that down. So you're going to find a limited amount of information. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, obviously, DOB tracks all of this when there are incidents on sites, and there's a lot. I'm not exactly sure at what point it gets, speaking generally, how much of that is reported to the public. From our community engagement team, we try to be pretty transparent whenever there's a major injury at a construction site in your borough. We give courtesy notifications to all the electeds and community boards that are in that area. But I'm not sure if there's like any kind of regulatory thing that says whenever somebody breaks a leg, God forbid, at a construction site, that's posted publicly. I'm not sure. So if there's any clarifying aspects to that question, I'd say send them to me, and I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'd be happy to elevate these to see what answers we can provide. But yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I have a question, Luke. when new construction is being done in an area, I just want everyone to know that if there's an issue, if there any kind of challenge, do you inform the community? Do you inform the neighborhood and the neighboring residents about any new construction or any zoning challenge or anything like that?
So we do inform when there is new construction. We send out a weekly notification. That is something the community board gets, and you'll see it's not the most. It's a very dense document because there's a lot of things we're required to report. But that is something that provides a notification to about new buildings. When it comes to zoning challenges, that is something that we currently do not have. You know, we try to make it very accessible so that you can check on a specific property, and you're going to see how many days are left in that challenge, as we kind of viewed. But there is no regulatory requirement or process by which the city would notify specific parties when a challenge has been made. I don't think that's been a requirement right now.
So no one in the neighborhood gets informed about it. No neighboring, if there's something going up next to my house or anything like that, you're not going to, the DOB is not going to, or the developer is not tasked to challenge or to notify anyone in the neighborhood of what's going on at all, right? It's
Well,
just, it's,
like I said, that weekly notification does include new buildings, I believe. And also, whenever there's an adjacent property being demolished, there's also a requirement that adjoining property owners are notified as well. So if there's a property going up, your community board will have been notified. If there's major demolition, the adjoining owners will have been notified. So, and with that plus the zoning challenge, that's very accessible online. We hope that people aren't surprised when they see some of these processes go through. You know, that's
yeah, but
so that's
but
kind
no
of
one knows, but you don't know about it though. I mean, how do you know to look if you don't know about it, if you don't know that it's in process, right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is like if you get one of those demolition notifications and you see that they're demolishing in the neighborhood or next to you, you might want to check with your community board to see if they've received any weekly notification that there's a new building going in there. And then I hope that this training will help people provide people with the resources that they can look into it for themselves. And that's what I'm here to do, to show you how exactly you can type in your neighbor's property address, if that's what you want to do, to see if there's any filings. So that's my goal here, to educate and illuminate some of the resources that we have, because they're various.
Yeah, you really have to play around with the website. I know that when I didn't realize that you guys had updated it, and I went in looking for information about a building. And when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, I had just learned how to use the old system. So I just took a day and I started playing around with it. And there is like really so much information that you can find out about a building. So a lot more than the old system. So, you know, I encourage everybody, just go on there, just start clicking away. And once you get used to it, you know, it is a lot more user friendly, even though the other system wasn't bad either. But this one, you can find out so much more information on property.
Right. That was one thing, but I guess what I'm trying to illuminate here to everyone is that, like in other, for example, in Westchester, other areas, right, the architect or the developer is required to submit his proposed construction to the neighboring, so he has to get the address of all the neighbors in that entire building, in that entire block, and send out a notification to every neighbor to say that there's a proposed building going up and we're going to have an open session at the Department of Buildings, where it is, you can come in and see what the proposed construction will look like next to your house. There's nothing like that here that goes on in New York City, where the onus is on the architect and the developer to send a letter out to each neighboring building to let them know, and to come and see even if it's as of right or whatever it is, to let the people see what's going to be built next to them, so they can have a voice, they can have an opinion, or so they can at least know what's going on. New York City doesn't have that. They don't have a process where it's not the responsibility of the buildings department, but of the architect and the developer to let neighboring buildings know, neighboring homes know, or whatever it is, know that what's going on in their community. And that's something I think that's wrong with New York City. And that's all.
Right, and Oral, we have spoken about this on the phone as well, and I appreciate your points. I would also like to mention that there are other processes, as I'm sure the board is familiar, when it comes to buildings that are not as of right, and those, are obviously provided a lot of notification. But before we get too far along around enforcement, let's jump back over to our building information system. So this is the other half of DOB's public portals, and it provides all your kind of enforcement related questions. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, does anybody, I'll just use the building that I work in, which is the Bronx office of the DOB. So you can see right away a stop work order exists at this property. You can click on it, and it's from 2018. And this is, and you can get some more information about what exactly happened, what the violation number is, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just one thing that you're going to see. Those stop work orders or vacate orders are going to be right there. Similar to DOB Now, you've got your property profiles up top with all these different information, address information, block and lot. When it comes to Biz, I use this all the time for this area over here and some of these over here. So I'm always looking at complaints, and this gets updated live with every single property in the city. It's showing when a 311 complaint that is routed to DOB, it's gonna show up here. When we inspect something, it's gonna show up here. Sometimes there's a little bit of lag, but it will all be here eventually. So this is kind of the format. You guys have probably seen this before. You can click on any one of these. You can also copy paste and send it to anyone. Violations that people get, buildings get from DOB inspection often will go through this one, oath ECB violations. And here you're gonna see the history of violations at this location. When you click into it, you're going to get a lot of information about what section of law, what the description of the problem is, and how to remedy the problem. And then the disposition kind of history. So since this is a publicly owned building, it's exempt from a lot of building code or kind of violations. The city doesn't give itself violations, so that's why you see this publicly owned status here. But that's generally where you're going to look. So you search the property on the building information search, and you can get to this from the DOB Now website, or you can just type in building information search NYC DOB. You're going to find this. You can search by property, block and lot. You get to the site, and this is primarily what I use. But let's say you have a job that was started in DOB Now, or you can't find the job in DOB Now, and you're like, I know they're doing some work. Where else can I find these permits? Well, you can look at this location, jobs and filings, and you can see that, oh, they were permitted for this existing 4th floor interior renovation. And there's even more data. So where when you click on DOB Now, all those windows pop up and those banners and with all that info, on Biz, it comes up with a separate web page, which is has a direct URL link, which means that you can send this exact page to anybody, which is something that you can't do on DOB Now. And then you can even dive down into these virtual job folders right at the top. And this has a lot of really interesting information. Supporting letters. Some of this isn't too interesting, but occasionally you'll come across different types of documents that, especially for major alterations or new buildings, you're going to find a lot of info on. So again, you go to I'll just go back, you go to job filings here, you jump into one of these job filings, and you can see all this info, what exactly they're doing. There's something that requires them, not for this type of work, but it requires them to say if they're working within 200 feet of a residence. Sometimes I found when I was working for a community board before DOB, I would find that some of these jobs would misstate what their location in proximity to a residence. So these are all things that the agency tries to look at, but sometimes you can catch different issues. But yeah, virtual job folders is something that's going to have a lot of info. This required items list isn't really going to be, it's going to show you things, but you're not going to be able to open them up or link to them or anything like that. So without getting too far in the weeds, let's back up a little bit to, so we looked at jobs, we looked at complaints, oath violations. Here you're going to find on the right side where it says permits, you're going to find all the permits. And these, you open them in a similar way. You get direct links. Up here you can print a version of the permit, and a lot of these you'll see on the actual construction site. Elevator records are here. You can see how many elevators, what the inspections of the elevators resulted in, and a lot of other interesting information. So, but those are the main ones that I'm usually looking at. After hour permits for a lot of jobs are here, but you're going to start to see these at that top banner on DOB Now these days. So it's going to be a little bit more rare to see after hour variances there. So, the main one that, let's say you want to see if the building next door, are they even allowed to have residents on the first floor, or is it supposed to be commercial? Well, you can look at their certificates of occupancy, which are going to be very useful for Biz because a lot of most buildings are built before 2016. So you can click on each one of these and you can find data from 1960, it looks like, showing what's there. And that can always be helpful for your information. So yeah, that's one last thing. You may be familiar with this when you use zoning challenges before, but a lot of our historical zoning challenge information were located here. So there's no zoning challenges. This building was built, I think, in 1918 or 1903. Before that process even existed. So, but that's where it would be if it had been. Are there any questions for Biz that I can help with?
Yeah,
Yes, I have a question. Oh, sorry if I ask now. There's a building next door to me that is under construction, and I've looked up on the biz, and the only permits I find for it are the original demolition permits. And there are permits that are posted on the site that look pretty current, but all the neighbors have a lot of questions about the building because it's got a kind of an odd configuration and it doesn't match the drawing that is up on the construction fence. And they just want to know, like, what's going on with this? What is it? So is there a lag time between when the permits get issued and posted and when they go up on the biz? We could look up the address now if you wanted. It's 2311 White Plains Road,
Okay, just a
2311 White
second.
Plains Road.
Okay.
And also we've had trouble sometimes figuring out exactly what the address is because a lot of buildings, you know, are big enough to kind of encompass a couple of addresses.
Right. So one
And
thing
sometimes
that
they're listed under one, or sometimes they're listed under the other, or they're on a corner. So they're two different streets that they could have addresses for.
right, which is what's happening right now. I'm trying to search this property and it's not coming up. You said 311?
2311 White Plains Road.
Okay, so let me show you a shortcut because I find this
Okay.
too. What I like to do is first go based on Zola. So Zola is made by not the wedding registry, it's the zoning map. And this is a tool that links DOB Now, or sorry, Biz. It links to Acris, and also the zoning information, obviously, and then also a physical map. So if you're like, I don't know the address, but I know that it's, wait, let's find something in, oh, my computer's lagging. Just a second. Okay, this is, can you guys still hear me?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry
Yes.
about this. So let's say you know what it looks like, where the intersection is, but you don't know the address. This is very helpful. So let's put on, where are community districts? So let's look at 11, right there. So you said it's at White Plains Road and where? You know, I'm not even going to try to.
2311 White Plains Road.
Right. So what I like to do is I pull it up first in Zola, and then I scroll down. You can see who the owner is, and I like to just directly link to the Biz profile. So it looks like there is a disapproved new building construction. This job filing format makes me think that this is a DOB Now job. So what I'll do is either copy that job number or the building identification number, and I'll go directly to DOB Now. So I'll just put it in here, pull up the address, 2301. I guess that's how it's, and you can see the range right here, 2301 to 2311. And you can see some of these jobs. So they got elevator permits, sidewalk shed, curb cut, construction fence, new 7-story building. So let's take a look. You open that up. And I'm assuming that, so what you're saying is that what you've seen as the drawings don't reflect what you're seeing on site, right?
Right. And the drawing I'm referring to is just it's not the blueprint. It's just that mock-up they put up on the fence that shows the facade.
So that mock-up, I don't think is going to be available on DOB Now or Biz.
Okay. No, this is what we wanted to see, what you're looking
right.
at now.
Yeah, so I found that by going into, I found GC is general construction, and I found it's, sorry, you scroll over, propose a new 7-story. You can adjust some of this, but then I just double click this and I scroll down to documents. So you can look through who the owner is, all of this, but I'm a very visual person, and I like to just see it with my eyes, what is going on. So I just clicked on the zoning diagram. You could also find this diagram through that front page of the portal, but yeah. So this is what has been submitted to the department, and I'm happy to connect with you to share this or go over this a little bit more. But let me show you some of the other documents that is publicly available. So sometimes they're titled other documents, but this is, what is this document? An architectural survey. So this is something that's interesting if you didn't know, where the sewer line was, where the curb is, or something like that. So
So the permits were not on that other site just because you're phasing out that other site, and
right. So
okay.
that's exactly right. So the permits weren't there. This is a relatively new filing from October, so they're going to be here. So it really kind of sucks, but you have to double check both systems for permits. And then if you have any questions,
Last question is, yeah, how far in advance do the permits get posted? Like, we seem to only find out about these things after the construction started, but do they have to have permits in advance of starting the construction, and how far in advance?
So when it comes to new building construction, it's complex. Certain types of construction can still go on while certain zoning things are being hashed out, or let's say there's a zoning challenge. But it's really the owner's, the owner would be taking the liability there. So let's say their foundation work has been approved, but DOB has objections to the height of the building, or their compliance with any other reason. We're able to approve through city regulations some of these steps, like the foundation work, and they can begin. But if their foundation work, they do it, and then it turns out that their other filing is denied or disapproved, and they have to change it substantially, it's on the owner to fix. So I know that's not exactly answering your question, but the answer is they really can't do any work without having a permit. So you're going to be able to see if it's approved or not on DOB Now or on Biz. So DOB Now is a little bit, the system we're on now is a little bit easier, I think, to find the status, because it's always going to be in this column. So this mechanical filing, they're not able to build their mechanical. So that's their ventilation system and things like that, because we still have objections. So until they get approved and then take out the permit, they're not allowed to start. So if you're seeing something and it only says approved, but it doesn't say permitted, then they're doing something without a permit. After they resolve all of the objections, if it's an as-of-right construction, we approve it. And then after we approve it, they still have to take out the permit. Sometimes people start doing construction without taking out the permit, and that's working without a permit, which is illegal. So approved doesn't mean that they're allowed to start work. The taking out of the permit kind of starts a clock, which they have to then renew their permits and things like that. So I hope that answers some of your questions, but it's pretty complex. But if you guys have any concerns about anything, obviously call 311 for any concerns, but then we're also here to help.
So,
Thank you.
yes, so my question is also, so some of the DOB Now filings are not transferred into the biz information. Is that correct?
Right. So they're going to be separate.
Right. So if it's I guess if it was a building that was built on the biz, or if I'm not sure, I would start with biz first and then look to see if I can find a filing on their DOB Now, or should I just go to Now first? Because sometimes you're not sure, and how do you determine if it's DOB Now or biz?
It's really a hit or miss. It could be either. So
Or both.
right,
Sometimes both.
exactly. Sometimes like half of the job is on DOB Now, and then the other half is on Biz. So it's really complex. No good way to say either, but hopefully as more projects come along, more people will be using DOB Now. So hopefully eventually DOB Now will be your first site.
Right. Will they ever link the two together? Or no?
I think that's something that we're considering. I think a lot of people would be very pleased about that, but it's not been made. We haven't publicly done that yet.
Right, because sometimes you have a building that was built on the biz and other portions of it was built on the DOB Now. It'd be great to link the two together.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, that would make our lives a lot easier.
Okay.
Luke, can we just go back a little bit? You were saying something about that, even if the elevator, even if there's if there's an issue with the elevator, that you guys would allow it to keep functioning. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and take note that I am not an elevator technician. There's a lot of experience that I do not have. I rely on the recommendations and findings of our elevator personnel, who are very experienced. But yeah, so there are a lot of times elevators that have defects that we know about, but the defects aren't life safety. So let's say one issue that happened was there were some of the lines or the cables that pull the elevator up, they were a little bit too long. So anytime the elevator went to the top floor, it would scrape the top floor. So it wasn't this was inspected. We determined that, hey, this is a defect. This cable is a little bit too long. It's causing this loud noise, but it's not a life safety issue. And we're going to accept this. So there's a standard that is acceptable for an elevator to maintain operation, but sometimes we acknowledge that there are defects, and we hope that the inspectors who are hired for those yearly inspections note that when they send in their compliance filings.
Okay.
Look, I have another question. When you say to vacate, like if a building has a vacate order, does that mean, what exactly does that mean to the tenants there and to the owner?
So there are a lot of different types of vacates. I've seen vacate orders for a lot of sites in the Bronx have rear yards, which adjoin other rear yards, and those rear yards are separated by a retaining wall. And a lot of times what happens is these retaining walls over the years get really dilapidated, especially if you've got a tree planted right next door, and it becomes unsafe because bricks can fall into neighboring yards. So we'll order a vacate for all the properties where the issue exists, but specific to the rear yards. So we say, hey, your rear yard has a vacate. This is considered a partial vacate. Now, if there's been a fire and the upper apartments are unsuitable, there's contaminants, we will often order a vacate, depending on the severity of the fire, to the entire building, to a specific portion of of the building, specific units. But this kind of goes into a process that is a little bit outside of DOB's jurisdiction. So we're kind of focused on, okay, what does the engineer need to do to make this space livable? What is safe for being able to be occupied and what's not? But from there, like, for example, where housing accommodations may allow or be required, that isn't something that DOB handles. So that might be the Red Cross, HPD might be involved in that process. I can't speak to the specifics of that. I'm willing to learn and interested, but at this moment, I don't exactly know. We're kind of focused on when we put that vacate on, that means, hey, you can't enter this area, and you could get in trouble for doing that.
And tenants have to leave?
If you have a vacate order on your unit, then that means that your unit is not safe for you to reside in. You have to leave. I mean, in most cases, there might be exceptions where we allow people to retrieve their belongings, but in general, yeah, if you've got a vacate order on your unit, you should not enter that unit.
Can you explain a partial vacate?
Sure. So just like the rear yard example, that would be considered a partial vacate. So that means not the entire property, but a portion of the property. So a partial vacate would be if, let's say, there was a fire on the upper floor and only 2 units were affected, we would give likely a partial vacate for only the units affected. But or for the rear yard, meaning you can still occupy your house, but if you go in the rear yard, that's a safety issue because of the retaining wall. So that's what a partial vacate is.
Very good, thanks.
And some of these are more severe than others. So there might be a vacate that says, hey, like, don't step foot on the site at all, like, don't even come close. But then other vacates like allow for a little bit of access if you're accompanied by one of their engineers or other professional personnel. So it varies a little bit depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, we see a lot of vacate orders and illegal basement apartments,
Yeah.
which is really like tragic because tenants move in there not knowing that it's an illegal apartment, and then, you know, either you'll come in or HPD will come in, and you know, they have to vacate, and it's really heartbreaking sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. I think sometimes people don't realize the power that is 311. I mean, this is, as you've probably experienced, the ability to affect how plans go, but we're very attentive to it. And if there's an apartment that's not allowed to be occupied for their safety or for their certificate of occupancy, that's what we may have to do. I know that there are changes that may be coming through Albany about basement apartments, and we'll definitely, obviously, review those to make sure that everybody's being kept safe. But at the moment, a lot of these units aren't allowed to be lived in. So,
Can you talk a little bit about SROs?
sure. And what about SROs?
Well, first you can tell everyone what an SRO is, and
Single
the
room
difference.
occupancy.
Yes, I know that, but some people may not. And what's the difference between a legal SRO and an illegal SRO?
So this is the difference between a legal SRO and an illegal SRO. I'm not exactly sure if I can kind of state this as like a blanket statement because it depends on what the certificate of occupancy says. I would really like, if he's available, Ted from HPD. You've got a lot of experience. If you're on the call,
Yeah, it's an HBD question, and it is. It
yeah,
really is. Yeah.
I would appreciate it.
Well, truthfully, I myself don't deal with SROs at all, but there are a lot of buildings, not as much in the Bronx, let's say, as in Manhattan, where there are single room occupancies. In many cases, buildings were built like that in the early part of the last century. Um, generally what they are is there's a room for a person to stay, but they may be sharing other facilities, bathrooms, kitchens, things like that in the building. For a long time, um, a couple of decades ago, let's say, they were frowned upon as not being appropriate. Because of the great demand now for more housing and affordable housing, there's discussions about, somehow making them allowed, but, under requirements, of course. So that's really, now somebody who takes an apartment and chops it up, let's say it's a regular residential building, Class A building, and then there's regular apartments, and then chops it up into separate apartments, that would be an example of he might be creating illegal SROs.
That's what it is. Exactly what it is.
All right, I'm going to attach in the chat kind of a breakdown from the Department of Homes and Community Renewal about SROs from July. Yeah, this is something that I'm happy to get back to you on if there are other questions. It is kind of legislated a little bit differently. It's not exactly in the building code per se, but well, I just need to get back to you with more information. If you're looking for an overview of an SRO, what that is, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to assist right now.
I think it has to be written in a C of O, and that a certain amount of apartments in a building are SROs. If it's not listed as that, if someone chopped up a building and said that he has SROs, that would be an illegal SRO because it has to meet certain requirements to be an SRO.
Correct. You are correct. I didn't bring that up because there's, especially in the Van Ness area, there are a lot of illegal SROs, and I remember that when I was an auxiliary police officer, I went to a call where the owner of the house was actually trying to evict somebody that was living in a room in the house, and Jimmy Vacca showed up out of nowhere, and so we kind of dealt with that. But there are, a lot of SROs in our community that we don't even know about, and I've inspected some, and like I walked into one on Arno Avenue. It was immaculate. I mean, it was just, everybody was happy with the way that the owner was, treating them, and just the accommodations. Although it was illegal, it wasn't like other SROs that I walk into where they're just horrendous. But I also want to know but aren't you guys the ones that go and inspect them?
Yes, definitely. I mean, if for issues like Oral mentioned, where if it's not allowed to be at that location, if it doesn't have the adequate building code requirements, there's a lot of aspects to it that it's complex, and yeah, DOB does inspect. I would say if you have properties in mind that you think have illegal units, see something, say something, let us know, call 311. But yeah, that's so maybe offline if you'd like to let us know where you're talking about. I think for everybody's safety, we would really want to make sure that any units that people are living in are legal and compliant with the building code and the zoning resolution.
Luke,
So what happens when, because I know there's been times when a DOB inspector will go out and they will not be allowed to go inside.
Yeah, and this is one thing that we encounter a lot. So we're not able to forcibly enter anybody's apartment. People have a right to privacy, and that often comes up against our ability to enforce things. So if we knock on the door and they wave at us through the window but don't let us in, we're not allowed to enter. We can see stuff, like if we see stuff through the window, we can potentially write a violation or through the fence or something, but that's a closed door is what often prevents us from potentially finding a lot of illegal activity.
Can you get a warrant from the court to enter?
That's
Very
something
difficult.
that I'm gonna have to connect back with my team. It's probably in a case-by-case basis. We do have a padlocks unit that if there are certain operations at certain sites in certain zoning districts, they can padlock a property. But when it comes to warrants, yeah, I'm gonna have to connect back with my attorneys to see how they advise me. But again, if there's any properties, I know we received a list from CB11. I provided a lot of feedback on that list for addresses. If there are any, I know there are some addresses that still need to be clarified. They were out of range. So if you have addresses that you want me to look into or have a complaint, please see something, say something.
I have two quick questions about variances and abandoned construction sites. On the variances, there's some buildings where it seems like all of a sudden on a Saturday, they're working when their permit's only Monday through Friday, and then they didn't get a variance permit, and then they stop working on the Saturday and it's done and it's over and nobody could do anything about it. And then on the abandoned sites, what happens when construction started and then for whatever reason halted? And there's a permit in place, but there's nobody coming to work. And the site ends up being used as a dumping ground and gets kind of out of hand because there's nobody there.
So for the first question, after our variances, if anybody is doing construction, they have to do it during normal hours, which I believe is 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. If they want to work outside of that, they have to have a specific reason, like undue hardship, public safety. There are 5 of them, a few that I am forgetting. And DOB reviews those, and they have to have a variance for that type of work. There might be some types of work that do not require. Another reason is if minimal noise impact. That's another reason. I'd be happy to give you the full list when I get after this. But yeah, if there, it's really, I worked at a community board in Manhattan, and one thing that we would always get is, as you can expect in Midtown Manhattan, construction noise. And by the time our emergency personnel responding to an after-hours complaint gets there, could be a day later, a couple days later, they might already be done. So it's something that you definitely want to document, send to your community board, send to Nairobi or myself, depending on where it is. And it's just diligence. You got to keep on going out. Depending on the severity of it, we might go out immediately, or we might prioritize other complaints. Noise is also something that's under the jurisdiction of a different city agency, which is also a challenge. But construction activity after hours should not happen without a variance. You should check both DOB Now and BIS. The other question about vacant construction sites. So if you get a permit, as long as your site is safe, which means it's not accessible from the public, sealed off. There's nothing from saying you're required to work every single day this week. A lot of construction sites have challenges with the pandemic, with funding, and that can change their ability to schedule certain things. I know that certain materials even might not be able to be shipped directly, stalling certain types of construction. So if it's sealed, if it's got a permit, then that's basically what they have to do. If somebody's breaking part of the fence, allowing their property to become inhabited illegally, then that's something that DOB can address. As for dumping, DOB can address the storage of materials that create a fire hazard, but that's on private property. On public property, you're going to have to go to DSNY. So that's kind of where we are with those.
Thank you.
Excuse me, would I be able to go back and ask a question on SROs and 311s?
Sure, if I'm able to answer.
Okay, in Van Est, we have of course, a lot of 2 and 3 family homes, so you understand why I ask these questions, only a few apartment buildings. And since 2008, when I first got on the board, I remember the first year, as far as when you see something, say something, I put 30 311 calls. At that time, I didn't do it online, obviously, so I made the calls. And it was for illegal basement apartments. And that's only in a span of 8 blocks. And I also made sure none of them were really addressed. Everything went back to the LS4. And then I got I did do it by email. That's right. Because then I got my submission that it was closed, saying could not gain access. And I know there was a request way back, and the Department of Buildings, to actually be helpful to communities, you have got to work on another protocol to work around this. We had one guy had an electrified fence. I mean, I got stories. So, I mean, there were some really unsafe situations. There were so many illegal, they're still there. I actually gave up after a while. Every single one of my 311s were closed. Went to my meetings, spoke to DOB, and nothing was ever done to actually help communities that have 2 and 3 family apartments. So when you've got multiple, like 10, 15, 20 311 calls, not just from one person, but from other people, which actually signs a bit of a red flag that there's something wrong going on there. And the elected official does nothing. DOB does nothing. How do we get the Department of Building to focus on working on a better protocol to protect a community with community leaders that are actually doing something? But please.
So what I can say is that I'm not sure what properties you're referring to.
I have the addresses.
Okay, so as I said at the beginning, Nairobi is the coordinator for this community board. I'll put her contact info in the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome to this is kind of what we're here for. If there's a property that there's been a repeat kind of thing that hasn't been addressed in a satisfactory way, we want to address it. But as it goes, like a lot of times what will happen for elevators, for example, we'll get a ton of complaints for an elevator, but based on our own staffing capabilities, we might not be able to go out there immediately. And even though there are a lot of complaints, and we do obviously take that into consideration, there's some logistical hurdles that we go through. Not an excuse in any amount, but I would say keep on doing what you're doing. You're elevating the conditions. Your elected representatives have jurisdiction over how these processes work. So if there's something that's unsatisfactory, and you've written to the commissioner, this is a forum, the community board, to express those things. But in general, in the short term, I would say connect with us, myself in Nairobi, and we'll look at these specific properties.
Okay, and getting back to what Hazel mentioned about the SROs in Van Ness, we had one particular SRO that was multiple. I mean, multiple. It was quite obvious what was going on there. It was high traffic. All of us made multiple 311 calls, and we knew about. Everybody knew about it. We were like, nothing's happening. Then about 2 weeks later, the FBI went in there and confiscated tons of guns. I mean, something really awful could have happened in the meantime. And the community was, we could just do so much. We rely on the Department of Buildings. We rely on the agencies to do their job, to be proactive. And I'm going back at least about 10 years. And it had to get to a point where the FBI had to come in. And honestly, I still don't know who or how that happened, but community was extremely thankful, especially when we saw the amount of guns that were being taken out. So, and I haven't, I know, I understand, but I wanted to say something more important that happened just the other day. I have a building right next to me, or a house away, new owner. They are doing work without permits, a lot of work. My backyard, see what they're taking out of the basement. I see what they're taking out of the first floor. They've actually changed the layout of the first floor. A lot of stuff that was done. 311 calls were put in. I don't know when the inspector went. They had, I don't even understand the message that the 311 gave, that they didn't see any need for it. I said, no need for it. So I called up customer service, the DOB. I was on the phone for 20 minutes. He says, well, put in another 311 call. I said, okay. This time I took pictures of them working. I took pictures of the actual construction company side that had their information. I didn't know if that was going to be necessary or whatever, or helpful, but to show there's work being done. And they closed it the next day saying, oh, it's being taken care of by the previous 311. And meanwhile, they're still doing their tons of work with no, and they're changing the whole occupancy of the house with their bedrooms on the first floor. They're making a basement apartment. I don't know what to do. I'm doing my due diligence, yet, I'm naked to the wind.
Yeah, and one thing that we've talked about today is how Department of Buildings has limited legal ability to enter people's units. So as you gave an example, it had to, the FBI had to go and enter that unit. We do sometimes march operations, which are multi-agency response to, I forget.
I know what
Yeah.
they're very good. We need it in Van Nest again.
Right. So these are some things that you bring up that are real, legitimate hurdles to us resolving these complaints. But if we're not provided entrance, then there's only so much we can do. And these complaints can be alarming. And that's where you might need to take it to a different agency, especially if it's, anything with drugs. That is not our jurisdiction. One other thing that I'd like to show everybody is that we've got a lot of great contact info for our units online. So I'm going to share my screen once again. This is just the homepage of DOB. I'll also put this in the chat. If you go to DOB, that banner, click inside DOB and go down to unit descriptions. You have all of these different unit descriptions. So if you have an elevator question, let's say you want to ask why an elevator can have defects and still be operating. This might be a great phone number to call. Or let's say you want to find who your community engagement liaison is. This is a little outdated. I'm not listed in the Bronx, but there are some numbers. Ophelia is my supervisor. This is all public, and you can look through these and call your community engagement liaison. Obviously, connecting with your community board to elevate these matters is going to be really, really important, especially
I'm on the community board.
Yeah, yeah, but your district manager has district service cabinet meetings where
Yes.
they directly address community boards. So if I haven't heard these complaints. These are the first time I'm hearing about it. I do not get pinged every time somebody calls 311. You have to find me, which we try to be transparent. We try to provide our information to our elected officials and community boards. But yeah, I hear it. Sometimes you don't know who to contact. And this is a useful page on our website that can help with that.
But Luke, I'm a little confused though. So if you guys get a phone call about somebody doing some work without a permit and you go to the site and you don't have access to the site, then that's it?
Sometimes, yes, it depends. Like, let's say somebody's complaining that somebody's changing the layout of an apartment. They're changing it from a 3-bedroom apartment to a 2-bedroom apartment. And let's say we go over to the building and we have to go through the lobby, up the elevator to the door. We knock on the front door, maybe we ring the buzzer to the superintendent. Superintendent doesn't answer. We can't close that complaint. Let's say they do answer. We get access to the lobby. The super shows us where the elevator is to go upstairs. We go to that unit. We knock on the door. We listen for anything. We don't hear anything. Even if we did, I'm not sure if we would be able to close that complaint. Obviously, if there's vibrations or a lot of noise, these are things that we can take into account when we make that determination, but the violating condition has to exist when has to be observed in person by one of our inspectors. And that's what makes it very challenging and how a lot of people get away with things.
So could you go to Bernadette's house and go to her backyard?
Well,
look
I've
to see
provided our contact info. I really
Okay.
hope that she reaches out to us because I really want to look into some of these cases that
It's
you
just
brought
because
up.
it's very dangerous. There was a building that I was working in where they actually removed a pillar from the basement, and I had called 311, and I was expecting DOB to go and check it out, and they couldn't get into the building. The landlord would not let them in, and they closed that case. And eventually though somebody did get in, and they had to replace the pillar, because if not, the whole left side of the building may have fallen. So it's just a little scary to me to hear that, and I know this has been going on for a long time because I've been doing this for 30 something years. But it's scary to me that, you guys, first of all, don't have the enforcement ability, you know, and maybe that's something that, you know, our elected officials should look at, giving you guys a little more power, because it's ridiculous how you can't do your job.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's redundant. We go out to a site a dozen times for the same complaint, and that's using city taxpayer money for those types of inspections that are just closed. But one thing I'd
But
like
the
to
only,
say is that whenever you file a 311 complaint, please do not hesitate to leave your contact info. Sometimes what I often do is get contact info. It's kept confidential, and we will set up an appointment so that you can let us in when you're going to be home, so that we can access. So, 311 is a confidential system. Never be afraid to leave your contact info with us.
yeah, Hazel, and the only problem with giving the DOB that type of authority, you have to realize that you're dealing with people who you don't know, right? You're dealing with people that may be violent. So it's probably not a very good idea to then you would have to go to another set of training, right? To train the DOB inspectors, right? Also, you're dealing with people that just may not be mentally ready for that stuff. So I think that that's one of the reasons why, to me, as a professional architect, like I've dealt with very hostile clients at times. So it wouldn't make that's a whole different ball game when you have to forcibly say that I have to enter into your apartment. You would need a police escort for certain individuals.
Right, and that's something that, you know, we are very concerned about too. I mean, when we hear about some of these structural instability complaints, it scares us too that we're not able to go out there and see or verify. And as Oral said, it can be a hazard for our personnel, and that's something that I think we've recently taken action on. I can see if I can find it, but I thought we put out this notice saying that assaults on inspectors are going to it's going to change to become more severe. I'm not sure, but we try to keep our inspectors safe, and being attacked or anything is something that we don't want to get our inspectors into.
Because you even see that on train conductors. I mean, it's ridiculous how people can get violent, even being late for work and wanting to slap a train conductor. So imagine trying to get in someone's personal house. You know, it's not something that I would.
Oral, I hear you, but if the Department of Buildings is supposed to be servicing communities, then the Department of Buildings needs to actually
But they're not
step
law
up.
enforcement.
Yes,
No,
I
but-
understand that, but they have to step up their
Yes.
game.
But it's
They
not.
have to
It's
step
not.
up their
They're
game.
not. But you have to understand they're not law enforcement.
That's
So-
not the point. The point is that she's saying, and I agree with Bernadette on this, DOB can get an access warrant. They'd have to apply for one, like
Right.
any type of warrant.
Right.
They have to show cause,
Right.
like, any type of warrant. You have to make
Correct.
sure that inspectors are at least making attempts to make the inspection. When they can show that they've made attempts to make inspections and fail to get access,
Right.
then they can get the access warrant. Of
For
course,
cause.
right. And once they get an access warrant, they may
For
have to
cause. What
come-
cause?
Right. They may have to come back with the police, but they can get an access.
What cause? But it has to be a cause, right?
Safety, a safety, if
A
you
safety
got
issue. Right.
a safety issue, you're putting up 5 different bedrooms.
How do you see that?
I had my neighbor went in. He was able to walk in, talk to the guy
He
nicely.
took pictures. Did he take pictures?
No, he did not take pictures. And if it was me, I would take pictures.
I know you would.
Yeah, so I wouldn't walk out of there without a picture. But the thing
I
is,
agree, but you see where I'm
actually
going.
know, but I know the house because the lady that lived there was my neighbor. She died last
Right.
2021, 103. I know that house. I know the upstairs, downstairs, and the basement.
Right.
It's a two-family occupancy, and it's probably gonna be an SRO now.
I understand.
And nobody,
I understand.
and these things come into neighborhoods, they come into good neighborhoods or bad neighborhoods, it doesn't matter. It's still not working families. It's still not it's not being done for, a two-family home. There's gonna be issues. These people, no permits, I waited.
No, I hear you,
to
Brenda.
see.
I hear what you're saying, but it's complicated.
Yeah, it's
In a
been
way.
complicated since 2008, 2006,
Yeah, but you
2005.
hear what I'm saying.
I know, but DOB hasn't listened. DOB has not listened, and they have not tried to work and help communities like Van Nest. There's a lot of communities like Van Nest.
No,
I
no,
just
the
want to
DOB
say,
does.
I also want to say that I think that DOB is overburdened at this point with all of the development that is going on in New York City,
point.
right?
Good point. Yeah.
They have, hired more, from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, have hired more inspectors to do these type of enforcement inspections with all the development that's going on. But still, with everything that is happening, it's still not enough. So
Yeah.
they'll respond to the 311 calls like the police will respond to 911 calls. So
Right.
if there is an immediately dangerous to life situation, they will
Right.
respond probably quicker than something that isn't as
Right.
dangerous, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they might, and I don't know, Luke, do you know if the DOB what is it called, the enforcement unit operates in the way that OSHA does by also sending letters about complaints that they've received?
I'm not aware of that. We get a lot of complaints, and I don't think we send letters to we do, if we go there and somebody doesn't answer the door, we do
Right.
leave a
LS4.
kind of bill thing.
LS4.
Right, an LS4, thank you, so that they can make an appointment. A lot of times people just don't make an appointment, but
No, they don't.
yeah.
They throw it away. It's crumpled up right in front of where it came
Right,
from.
and I'd like to note, somebody mentioned it, that we are hiring at DOB. So if you know anybody who's interested, it's a great career path for inspectors, design professionals, people to get their start.
And
So,
make sure that they're fitted for armor.
well, I hope not.
Me too, Luke. I hope not. Yes, true.
Okay, I wanna
I'm sorry, Hazel. I have two questions. I don't know who's running this meeting or how it's being run, but I had my hand raised for
Wow.
almost 20 minutes. So when may I be able to ask my two questions, please?
Go ahead.
All right, this is the question to DOB. First question. Thank you. Does the fire department notify DOB when they have to respond to someone being stuck in the elevator in a residential building? Are you notified of that?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, that's, we get a lot of referrals. We get referrals from FDNY every single day. And I
Okay.
believe that we would, because it's an elevator. I mean, I don't know if there might be one case out of a 1,000 where they don't, but
Mm-hmm.
I think yes.
All right, because it happened to me, so I'm going to check online. Second, I didn't hear clearly your response, but this is something I've been wondering because I do use your portal a lot, the DOB and Zola, and so I use your apps very well. My question is, and I think I know the answer, but I want you to confirm to me, what is the lag time between when actually someone applies for a permit and when it's reflected on your public database?
I don't exactly have that data offhand. My understanding is that it happens pretty instantaneously. Somebody came in today and asked us, hey, what is happening with this job? There hasn't been any updates. And then I checked with her sitting next to me, and it had been updated that morning. So I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure at this moment. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are lag times, like when an inspection occurs, we have to send that inspection report that has to get processed and put into the system.
No,
There's
no,
also
I wasn't.
humans behind a lot of these processes, and with backlogs, sometimes people sometimes forget accidentally to submit that
Okay.
that form or something.
I
But
was I was not
yeah.
referring to the inspection report. I was referring to when people apply for the permits. And I was kind of informed that if it's done online portal, they do it on use the online portal. It is reflected much quicker than if someone does it by paper.
Yeah, I think all of our job filings are done on the computer. I don't think we do paper anymore.
You don't do if someone cannot fax it to you any longer or do it by email like they used to do it, because from my understanding they still do, but not
Well, I mean,
not
let
everyone
me,
uses the
I can get
portal.
back to you with specifics. I'll write this down, but my understanding is that we have these portals that I just showed you for that specific reason, so that to alleviate the amount of paperwork that we have and to be transparent about what is being
Mhm.
filed. So I think it's all
Um,
all online.
well, I'm going to send you an email because there seems to be lag time between when someone does put in a permit and when it's reflected on the database. So, and that kind of puts someone at a disadvantage. If they want to do the 45-day challenge, because from my understanding, it's based on the date that it was approved.
Oh,
And
okay. So there might be a little bit of a difference. A job might be filed with DOB, for example, a new building, but
mm-hmm,
that zoning diagram hasn't been submitted. So a lot of times
mm-hmm,
people will send in a job, but it doesn't have
mm-hmm,
all of the pieces and parts
mm-hmm,
that are required. So they might have filed the job on a certain day, but they didn't submit that zoning diagram until a certain day later. But
mm-hmm,
in general, my understanding is that the zoning diagram is when it's approved, it gets posted. Now, when I say
mm-hmm,
approved, that doesn't mean that it's been, allowed to be built. I mean, like they have sent in a document that looks something like a zoning diagram, and we're like,
mm-hmm.
okay, this is not somebody's school essay. This is a architectural drawing. We approve this, and we're going to put it for the public challenge. I think that happens instantaneously, but
It does.
I,
It does. It
yeah.
happens
Not all the
instantaneously.
time, and I could give you examples. It does not happen all the time. Maybe with
Yes, it does.
no, it doesn't.
Ever since 1980 something, even when you walk in, once you pay for that permit, a contractor pays for that permit, he's issued a paper copy of that permit, and he can print it out right there at DOB. And once he's able to print it out, it's posted on their site. It's all done on the
That's what
computer.
I
It's
think.
all
There's a
done on the
lag
computer.
time between when it's posted on their website. Is what I'm saying. I didn't say you cannot get a
They,
permit that same day.
they issue it right then and there in front of you at the DOB back in the days, not done online. And once it's approved, they write your name in, write the contractor's name in, and they say you can go ahead and print it out right now. And
And the zoning
once it's typed out, it's on their site.
and the
That's not
zoning
true because I've
challenge
seen the dates
is
when it's
different
posted.
from
Yes.
being permitted.
Right.
Those are two different things. So you've got the 45 days for the zoning challenge, but that's not permitted. And often, even right after the 45 days, it doesn't like automatically get approved. We have to review any challenges, and that may take a
For the
while.
zoning challenge.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but if someone doesn't meet the 45 days cutoff, then they can no longer challenge it. That's my concern. And second, regarding the permits, I have seen on the database uh, where it's been posted, but the date it was approved was much earlier. So that's what I'm saying. There seems to be a lag time. But I could send you examples
Yeah, please
because
do.
because I monitor many buildings in my community, and I actually had information for someone, and I didn't believe them, and then they appear on your website. So for someone to say, "Oh, it simultaneously appears that same day they get the paper," that's not accurate. But I'll send you evidence of that. Thank you so much.
Right, and for everybody following along, that DOB Now portal does show how many days that are left. But I have had this issue too, actually. Several months ago, maybe half a year ago, I was looking on a property that was highly publicized, and looking at the zoning challenge for that, and there's a difference between date posted and date approved, and
Thank you. Exactly.
right, and that is something that I haven't looked at this property in a really long time, but that's something that at the time I was flagging to our internal IT personnel, and it's one of the things that they had been working on. I'm not sure if it's been corrected yet. Sounds like it hasn't, but I can understand the confusion, but there might be a couple different dates that are being confused. And if you want any project, let me know and I can specify and clarify any of those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Robert, did you have a question?
Yes, just a couple of things. Community Board 11 and the Housing Committee need to look at new construction since June, because in June 2020, the City Council passed Resolution 1211, which states that a 15% set aside for homeless must be put in any city-funded project or any construction that gets tax breaks. Now, with our mayor looking to really push 6,000 affordable housing units by the two Metro North stations that are in CB11 or next to CB11, I think that with this City Council Law 1211, that Community Board 11 may wind up with 4,000 of those units. Now, since we have HPD here, most of those units, if they're going to be affordable, are going to be either funded by the city, partially or in whole, or get tax breaks. So that would mean of those 4,000 that I would project that CB11 has, because we know all 3,000 by the Morris Park station are in CB11, and figuring half or even less than half at Van Ness, which would be 1,000 to 1,500, you could be looking at 600 or more of these 4,000 units that must be set aside for homeless in Community Board 11. I'd like to know, is anybody watching this, and why DHS and even the Department of Buildings is not coming to the Community Board 11 District Service Cabinet meetings. I know that for a fact because when I represented Councilman Andy King last year on the board, they didn't come, and there's never been minutes for the past 2 years on these District Service Cabinet meetings. I know who attended them and how quick they were. So, I mean, we need to look at how many of these new units are going to be called on to by this Resolution 1211. Thank you. And if you could ask Mr. Weinstein, since I can't ask him directly, Madam Chair, that he could answer that.
Ted, would you like to jump in here or?
Sure. I think you're interpreting the law a little too broadly, Robert. The fact is that it is correct that buildings that are built, new construction buildings that receive financing from HPD, are required to set aside 15% of the units for formerly homeless. That means people coming out of the shelter system. And there is a section that talks about, you're saying tax breaks. Well, I'm sure that's not the phrase that's used in the law, but I think you're interpreting a little broadly. A lot of the buildings that are built do not have that requirement to have the 15%. If they're privately owned, they're privately funded, they don't have that requirement. And without getting into a whole discussion about the area studies around the Metro North stations, I think it's very safe to say that a fairly small amount of those buildings, if they're ever built at all, because there's no requirement to build, just even if the zoning changes, there's no requirement to build, will end up having that type of requirement. So I think, I commend you on your arithmetic there, but I think it's just not going to happen like that. In many buildings now in the Bronx, we're seeing, in fact, you're seeing this. I'll give you the example. The addresses that you've asked about, that the community board has asked about, the area between White Plains Road and Bronx Park East, between Pelham Parkway North and Allerton, those are the addresses that I think that triggered the discussion with DOB for tonight. those buildings are not using HPD programs for financing, and they will not have that 15% requirement. If a building, let me just to be clear, if a developer does come to us to seek financing, so, construction financing, then absolutely, that building would have to have that kind of set aside.
There was a land use meeting where 333 units of affordable housing through HPD at 2560 Boston Road is being, well, the board rejected it, but it's, going to be heard again. So of that, at least 49 units are going to have to be available. And we don't know if they're going to be single, two-family, or three-family units, 3-bedroom, I should say. All right,
Okay,
so.
Yes, I was at the public hearing, I was at the land use committee, and I was at the full board meeting. And that development, as far as using HPD financing, they have indicated an interest in seeking financing from construction financing from HPD. There's been very minimal contact thus far. I guess that development team has concentrated on the ULURP first. But eventually, if they do end up using HPD financing, then there will be a 15% set aside requirement. But again, I want to emphasize these will be formerly homeless, and the reason we use that phrase is because it's permanent housing. And the minute that the people in that category sign a lease, and there'll be a rent stabilized lease like anybody else in the building, the minute they sign a lease, they're not homeless any longer. And so therefore, it's not like there's some, mark on their door or anything like that. Again, it's permanent housing. So if somebody, let's say, was in a shelter because there was a fire, or maybe they're in a shelter because they just couldn't afford the rent anymore during the pandemic, before the freeze on evictions. And now, they're able to leave the shelter and get into an apartment. If they're lucky enough to get into an apartment in a building like that, then they will be a rent stabilized tenant in the building. If they want to stay there for the rest of their lives, they can.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted.
And by the way, I was going to say this later in the new business, but Hazel has spoken to me and about similar to tonight where you have DOB there to talk about things. We would very much like to come, from HPD. I've suggested perhaps a joint committee meeting of your housing committee and your land use committee to talk about what HPD does and what HPD doesn't do, but particularly focusing on new construction. Because I know
that would be great.
That's something that you're facing right now in various ways. And we're happy to, we want people to understand, our policies, our programs, and our practices when it comes to, what we do and what we don't do. So like, for example, that sudden explosion of new buildings in that area west of White Plains Road, to my knowledge, none of those people are seeking HPD financing.
Yep. It would be great, Ted.
But again, we want to come to a meeting. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow with another unit within HPD to start seriously talking about putting together a presentation. We've done similar presentations in the past, and the rest of my staff is still on this call. There were 4 of us in the Bronx Planning Unit, and they were all on the call tonight because we wanted to, hear what gets said. And Luke, I found it very helpful, myself. So we're meeting with another unit within HPD tomorrow to start talking about putting together a presentation that we can give you. We've done this in the past year or so. We've done it for Board 3, Board 4, and Board 12. And we're more than happy to come and do, you have a number of you on this call are very knowledgeable, but there's been limited experience in your district with affordable housing through city programs, and we would look forward to coming and explaining, what we do and how we do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because I'm the co-chair for the land use committee, so I think that would be a fantastic idea. And I like the phrase that you use, formerly homeless, because I don't because like you said, once they sign the lease, they're like anyone else. They're cannot, and the term homeless occupying a building just doesn't sound right. But thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, well,
My
also
pleasure.
I had sent Kenny an email. He hasn't gotten back to me yet, so maybe you can push him on that.
I will. Thanks,
Um,
Hazel. I will push him on that.
Sure.
We were
Thanks.
thinking maybe even by February, we can have something put together
Yeah, definitely.
to set up, again, a joint meeting like that.
But remember,
Sounds
we're in the first week, so we have to have it before we're the first Thursday.
Yeah, sounds fantastic, Hazel and Ted. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Luke, before we close, or before I let you go, I just want to talk about zombie properties. Again, Van Ness has a lot of
Best for last.
property, and who was that said that?
That was me, Rich. I got best for last. I just said.
Oh, okay.
We have zombies around? I didn't know that.
We have zombie properties, and
Oh.
let me tell you, I was dealing with a person from Department of Buildings. I'm not going to say who he was. He was totally useless. Useless.
That's a
when it
hard word to
came
use.
To helping me with these properties. So, can you explain your DOB's responsibility as far as zombie properties go?
So I'm looking this up because this is a term I'm not super familiar with, and it looks like
Well, a zombie property is a property that's been abandoned. Either a lot of times it's an estate issue where the owner has died. Like one property I was dealing with, the owner died. The kids got the property and they didn't want to do absolutely nothing with it, and they just left it there, abandoned, falling apart. We got squatters in there. We got drug dealers going in. We got a bunch of cats living in them now. So this is the problem that we have.
So the HPD has a page on their website called Zombie Homes, which defines these types. And I think this is from an initiative that was launched in 2017 by HPD, and that followed the Zombie Property and Foreclosure Prevention Act of 2016. So DOB addresses vacant buildings, zombie properties, not in any kind of programmatic way that I know of. I mean, we do have unsafe buildings, but that seems to be separate from this initiative, which was initiated in 2016 by the state's law. So we're always going to be responsive to and attentive to issues, but we're not going to necessarily classify these zombie properties in a particular way like HPD would.
At 9?
We do have this, again, the unsafe buildings complaint that we help categorize. And a lot of times those unsafe buildings are vacant. So I'm happy to go with CB11 in Nairobi. We're happy to kind of go through these properties and address the issues at hand. But I'm not sure that the zombie classification is going to have much of an impact on us. We're really focused on what exactly the issues are.
Well, the issues are that the property is vacant, being vandalized. Sometimes they're not boarded up, so people can come and go as they please. And when I did speak, and I know about the law because I pushed for that law because it was ridiculous how these properties are just left and nobody is responsible for them.
Sanitation, rats.
Yeah, it's really, they're really in bad shape. And so when I contacted, I called 311 and they said, oh, well, that's a DOB issue. So we called DOB so they can at least come and, and board it up. I mean, I did title searches for, and some of these, some of these properties, I couldn't even find who the owner was. And then a lot of the properties were owned by the banks. The banks didn't want any responsibility. They said, whatever, just, everybody was just passing the buck and it never went anywhere.
Yeah, and one thing, so DOB does not board up properties ourselves as an agency. We will go to a vacant property, see a fence is allowing unauthorized access, will give the owner on record a violation. If they don't respond to the violation or they don't respond to a commissioner's order, we might give them another violation. This could be a multi-month process. At a certain point, depending on the severity of the situation, we make a referral to HPD or an emergency order to seal the building. And if the owner doesn't seal it within a certain amount of time, then it's incumbent on HPD to go out there and hire their own contractors to seal the building, and then HPD bills the owner for the work. So there is a process in place. You know, the city isn't going to allow a property to be unsafe for the public, but it is a little bit, Ted might be able to provide some more context.
Yeah, if I may, just two separate things. The first about zombie properties. There is a law. It's I don't deal directly with it, but my understanding is the law is somewhat narrowly written. You know, it's not like just, you know, you're walking down the street and you see a vacant house that immediately it becomes dealt with as a zombie property. But there was a law. We actually had within, we have a sister division within HPD that works very closely with us. And they had a unit that worked on this. They were the ones to try to implement this. And not only in terms of doing the research, but also they had people in certain target areas going out and just walking the streets looking for properties. So I can tomorrow when you know, I can contact whoever it is who's handling that now, and just tell them that, you know, this community board has an interest in knowing more about, you know, from our end then what happens. And generally what they try to do is it's where there is a bank still involved, like Luke said, and getting the bank to then do something, because if the bank is still involved, they have a responsibility. And so that's been something that's been, it's a program that is actually very good. It really needs to be expanded. The other point though, that then Luke started to talk about was also under the city charter, HPD is the city's seal up and demo agency. We're responsible for seal up and demolition. And so if DOB, for example, issues an emergency declaration that property requires demolition, or sometimes it's a retaining wall. In the Bronx, we have lots of retaining walls all over the Bronx. And so if there's what looks like a wall is getting weak or may fall, and DOB issues the violation, that then comes to HPD. And the seal up, the same thing. If a property needs to be sealed up and a violation is issued and the owner doesn't do anything about it, HPD, you know, will then contract to have somebody go and do it and then bill the owner. One of the things I would just say as a corollary to this, so people, because I know people very often get confused, you know, between DOB and HPD. I'm sure Luke knows, like, you know, their inspectors and our code enforcement inspectors have two different jobs, but I think people get them confused. One of the things that happens is when there is the need for a sidewalk shed, for example, to be created, you know, erected outside a property so that the people walking the sidewalk are safe. There's usually a sign, of course, and the sign reads who the owner is. And very often they will say the owner is HPD. And then we'll get calls, you know, from somebody saying, you know, there's a vacant building on my block and it's HPD's and I'd like to buy it. Well, aside from the fact that's not the way it works, it's not HPD, it's not the city that owns the property, but HPD is the applicant for the seal up and for the sidewalk shed. And that's why it says on the sign that it's HPD. So I know the reason I bring that up is we've gotten a lot of calls like that from people. And so I just explained that, but yeah, we are the seal up and demolition unit division agency, I'm sorry. And so, you know, if there are, you know, and it could be something as simple as maybe there's an apartment building and the chimney on the roof is tilting, something like that. It doesn't have to be an entire building. So, you know, we would then look into those things. But yeah, we rely a lot on DOB to issue a violation first. Sometimes we may have a situation where it's a city-owned property even, and we want to build have affordable housing built on the lot, and maybe there's even just a shack or some small structure on it. It would be, we would like, if possible, for DOB then to issue a violation that structure needs to be removed, something like that.
It's interesting. This
But we
brings up
work
another,
together constantly, the two agencies.
yeah, this
Yeah,
brings up another issue that we don't have to get into it, Ted, but squatters' rights, right? If an building is abandoned, but you have people living in there, that brings up another slew of issues.
It's a problem.
but there's a difference between, well, let's not get into, that's a totally
I
different,
know,
we'll be here for 2 hours talking
How
about it.
about that? That's true.
But I gotta tell you, I wish that I had DOB give any one of these properties a violation. They just wouldn't. Nobody wanted to do anything, and it was so frustrating. But now that I know, so Ted, you and I will be talking about this. I will follow up with you about these properties if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for DOB?
I do have something to say for both DOB and HPD. When someone has issues with specific property, must they go through the 311 portal, or if they send you email, will you give them a courtesy? My issue is that sometimes, I'm not saying it happens, but sometimes people use their political weight to retaliate against their neighbors, and we have to use. I think everyone should be treated fairly. So if you want to follow up on a property, it should be done through 311 portal, so it could be monitored by the public. It shouldn't be done behind closed doors. That's my comment.
So any complaint that we get, we accept complaints in a number of ways. If people tell us there's an unsafe building, I'm going to make a inspection request. I'm going to trigger that internally. 311 is really useful because it allows you to make one phone call and kind of be done with it. But yeah, there might be a number of different ways that we get referred to any sorts of issues. And we do see that sometimes people use DOB to retaliate against their neighbor, and it's often, if it's unjustified, a waste of taxpayer money. But we're going to be attentive to all these complaints. I mean, I would say that if you hear of somebody that's using their position, call our internal affairs division. We've got an IAD.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Yeah, or the Conflicts of Interest Board, or the Department of Investigation. We are also required to root out and report corruption, so that's something that we're going to be really attentive to.
All right, and will I be able to foil those internal requests?
I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to connect with my attorneys about what the limitations are. I know there's some confidentiality things. But if you've got, I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to get some clarity from our attorneys.
Okay. Yeah, I have made many reports to conflict interest, and I'm making a few to Department of Investigation regarding some things that's happening that I feel like people are using their political positions unjustly, and all are created equal, in my opinion. Thank you so much.
If I can answer from the HPD side in terms of 311, we strongly would prefer, because again, puts the complaint into the system and then it can be tracked more easily. I mean, there are times when I'm part of the planning division, but because we're the people, my staff and I we're probably the people at HPD who most often speak to community boards, because of ULURPs and things like that. And so very often a community board district manager, will contact me with something that has nothing to do with planning. So I'll just direct them to the right part of the agency. And very often it's code enforcement. And what happens is the code enforcement division will tell me the same thing. They'll say, please have them call 311, because then that puts it into the system and they can track it.
Yes, thank you, because we had an issue with this poor lady on Paulding Week when she had people making false reports. because they didn't like the fact that she had cats, and now she lost her house. I'm sure all those people are happy, but they harassed her, and board members harassed her with false complaints. But because she was an elderly woman, not unlike me, where I will fight back, she just didn't have the energy or the willpower to fight back. So that's why I brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know,
Hazel, I have one more question for you for
okay,
Luke.
just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Roxanne,
Let's wrap
just
this
so you
up.
know, Roxanne, just so you know, I encourage everybody to call 311, regardless of what the complaint is, because that's how the paper trail begins. My client, you know, my tenants, I always tell them, please call 311, because when I call code enforcement, I want to give them a list of complaint numbers so they can't say, oh, well, you know, they didn't call 311. Oh yeah, they did. And you know, these are all the complaint numbers. So, you know, I encourage everybody to start with 311 and, you know, and take it from there.
Well,
Okay,
I got
great.
emails sent from the board to different agencies requesting things that was not done transparently, but thank you.
Okay, so quick, Hazel, I just want to ask Luke one quick question. I think I emailed you privately, but I'll ask everyone here. Like, if someone's doing construction, right, and let's say your wall is damaged, something on your property was damaged, right? Do I call 311 to file a complaint, and what is the process to resolve it? Let's say something is being built, you know, with permits and everything, but you notice that something has happened to you. Let's say your retaining wall, your fence, it was damaged or moved or whatever. What should a person do in that case? You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
So
Luke.
that's a big question.
Mhm.
Depends on what you'd want to do. So sometimes people will report a violation to the DOB, and we will look at it. But sometimes we can't definitively say who caused the issue.
But if you can prove it, if someone can prove it was done by, because they said they have photographs of the work that was done, and they have photographs showing how it was damaged.
Right. So hypothetically, if somebody had proof and it's very obvious, we may write a violation saying that this construction site caused this to be damaged. This is something that we see sometimes when there's jackhammering, and
Right.
a lot of these buildings are pretty fragile,
Right.
adjacent buildings, and that can cause some damages. So we might order the new building or whatever construction project is going on to address these issues, to support the adjacent property, provide waterproofing. So it's a case by case basis, but yeah, this would be in terms of violations and orders. Sometimes I know people like they will make arrangements instead of getting the DOB involved to fix certain issues. I am not advocating for that. I think that you know, if there's a violating condition that you may want documented, you want to make sure that the work is done with a permit, that things are done above board. But I know that that does happen where people will be like, all right, I did mess up your fence. I'm just going to fix it, and we'll do it that way. But I would say reach out to your own attorneys, your licensed professionals to make that determination, and it's kind of a case by case basis.
Luke, can I just jump in here and ask a follow-up question to that? Isn't it mandatory, according to like Chapter 33 building codes, that the construction contractors have to take certain measures to protect adjacent property?
So there are protections that are required. I don't know Chapter 33 verbatim, but I'm happy to provide some citations after looking through it a little bit. But yes, there are a lot of protections that are in place per the building code and administrative code and things like that. So I'm happy to connect offline if you're talking about a specific property, and I think you might be based on our previous communications oral. Happy to look into some of the building code citations and provide you some more
Yeah,
details.
that would be great, because there was some damage, and I have I have photographs of it, but you're right, I did talk to the owners, the developers rep, and they didn't make a verbal agreement to fix it, but nothing has been done.
Yeah, so I can't give you, personal advice. I would say reach out to your attorney and your licensed professionals. But we are here. We are attentive. If people have violating issues, conditions at their properties, don't hesitate to let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. This was a great meeting, and the information you provided was awesome. I appreciate it so much. I'm sure we'll be contacting you with follow-up questions. And Ted also, thank you. I don't know if he's still here. Oh, yes, he is. So thank you, Ted, and we will take you up on that, hopefully, next month.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. This is very good. Thank you so much, Luke and Ted and Hazel, for putting this together.
My pleasure. So we're going to go into the gallery session. I don't know if anybody signed up to talk. No? Nobody?
I had signed up to talk, but I asked my questions.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I didn't sign up, but I would like to utilize the public gallery session, please.
Sure.
This is regarding Just Homes. My question is that, and this is not an opinion, Fortune Society, the service provider and the developer of this proposed supported permanent housing, has gone out of its way to answer the Community Board 11's questions. And then you send the list of the dozen questions, which were very detailed questions. Yet you decided to take a vote before they could respond to those questions. And then I think you created some sort of false narrative that the Fortune Society was not answering people's questions, which is not true. Maybe you don't like the responses, which is that's fine. You don't have to like the responses, but I feel like it was not fair for this board to rush to a vote on this matter, knowing that HAC will probably not have a hearing on this till much later next year, because, as they stated several times, once they create that preliminary draft of the design of that proposal, the building, there will not be a hearing on it, because the developer, Fortune Society, will have to have some kind of preliminary design of this proposed facility. So that won't be done at least 6 to 8 months, at least, if not more. So I just feel like, why was the rush to vote on something while waiting for the response from Fortune Society? And from my understanding, the district manager sent it like less than a week before you took a vote on it. So you barely gave them that 10-day request that they said that to give them 10 days to turn around and respond to all your questions. So that was my statement on that why was the rush to vote on this while waiting for Fortune Society to provide you with all the answers first?
Okay, thank you. That was just a board decision to do that. I don't have any other answer.
Well, it's a very poor decision, because I think
as the questions, we asked more than a dozen questions. We sent them a lot of questions. I mean, at least I did. I asked a lot of questions, and every time I got an answer, it was a different answer. So that's just me. I can't speak for anybody else. I was not satisfied with the answers they gave me. I must have spoken to 3 different people, and I got 3 different sets of answers. So,
well,
but
like
thank
I
you.
said, if you're not satisfied with the answer, that's fair enough. But why not wait?
Well,
for
because
them to respond?
they said at the last public hearing that we had, they gave out another pamphlet which was supposed to answer all the questions that we had provided. And to my knowledge, because I don't even remember, what they said. When I looked through it, they really did not answer any of the questions that I had.
And those dozen questions that was sent after the public hearing that was held at Jacobi Hospital. So if those FAQs didn't have the answers to those questions that was sent after the public hearing, and the FAQs were the third FAQs were released on the same day of the public hearing at Jacobi, that's just the timing. It's not the fact that they avoided to answer those questions. I'm not upset that you don't like their answer. I just feel like the board went out its way not to wait for those answers and to create this false narrative that they don't want to give you answers, when I think Fortune Society has gone out its way to answer everyone's question, regardless of how some of those questions were very offensive, especially calling most of those potential resident pedophiles. And you mentioned pedophiles in your letter, which I find it very offensive, because not everyone that's homeless or has a criminal justice background is a pedophile. We have teachers who are pedophiles. We have cops who are pedophiles. We have lots of priests who are pedophiles. And there is a law that prohibits certain pedophiles from living within a certain distance from a school. And that would, and Just Homes site in Building 2 would not be exempt from that law. They would also have to abide by that law. So I just feel like you were not being fair with them. And going forward, I think we should create an open conversation with Fortune Society and try to create that relationship where we could have a true, meaningful discussion. It will benefit those who support it, and it will benefit those who do not support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. Is there anybody else?
Yes, I would like to follow on with what Roxanne said. I agree with her completely, and I have real questions about the letter that was sent from the community board. It was signed by one person, the vice chair, Al D'Angelo, and I have no idea how many board members received all the answers from Fortune Society and Health and Hospitals, how many board members read those answers, how many board members saw the draft of the letter. The letter draft was mentioned on several agendas, meeting agendas, but never ended up getting discussed for various reasons. And then all of a sudden, it was sent, and we don't know who on the board saw the draft of the letter, had input into the draft of the letter. The letter cited objections that had things that had been mentioned very early on and later corrected or supplemented with further information, but cited those as reasons for the board's objection. So I just think, and I too don't understand what the rush was in getting this out, and why was it signed by the vice chair and not the chair and not the whole board. It just raised far more questions than it answered about how the board is dealing with this. And given that we have 3 more years to go, I just hope that the board steps up its game and deals with this whole issue in a more transparent, fair way, and doesn't repeat incorrect information as reasons for objecting to Just Home. I think there's been way too much of that. Repeating incorrect information as if it's the truth and hasn't been corrected by the officials. I just think the board has to do a better job on this. It's creating way too much division in the community. And that's not what the board is here for. It's not here to divide our community over serious issues that we have to deal with as a community and live with.
Can I make a point about the letter? Okay, number one, the letter itself, if it's coming from the community board, the decision would be from the community board. It doesn't mean that then it goes out for input from the community. It's the board's opinion from all of the information from etc.
Yes, I realize that, but my question was how many community boards actually saw the draft of the letter and had input into the letter before it was sent? Not community members, community board members.
We all received a draft of the letter. We all saw it before it went out.
So, I mean, and it gave input. So my point
So
is,
I'm not 100% sure that's accurate, though.
well,
I am a board member. I did not see a draft of the letter before it went out. We
Yeah,
discussed
I'm gonna
that.
have to agree with Cynthia. I did not see a draft before it went out. I had no input on what it said.
It was emailed to the board members.
Yeah, I got it. I read it.
December
saw it.
14th.
Yeah. I saw it.
But that's when it was sent, and what we were
Right.
emailed
We'll
was
follow. We'll follow up on
been
when the draft
received.
was
It had already
or
been
not
received by
sent
Health and
out.
Hospitals.
I think
We'll
I think
clarify.
all the board members were CC'd on it.
No, I think the question is when was it sent out versus when did the draft go out for the members? So
We'll find out and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get
guys
back to
on it.
everyone.
okay,
Thank you.
I don't know the exact dates. of it.
Hazel,
Okay, thanks.
Madam
Well,
Chair.
I have the exact date of when I received it. It was probably about December 14th. But at that point, I mean, I don't think I know I wasn't reached out to be given any type of input as to how it was drafted or anything like that. I think I just
You
got.
could respond. I responded to it.
so did I.
Yeah, I was given.
Let's table that.
If you go see him, Malcolm, respond to it.
Excuse me. Let's figure out exactly the dates from Jeremy, when whoever sent this out, and then we can get back next month, come back to the meeting and we can clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
Are we not still in the gallery session?
Yeah, you're next, Robert.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. I must object to the previous two speakers because we still don't have enough information from Health and Hospitals Corporation. It's not Fortune Society, it's Health and Hospitals Corporation that we don't have enough information from. Now we're hearing that they want to build 3 more buildings on the site in the parking lot. All right. And in the information, we got it the date of the public hearing, or I should say the board got it and sent it out. Now, if there's a problem in getting information to the board members, I suggest you talk to your district manager. He's the one who's supposed to get it out. All right. We know that he didn't send in the questions until a month later. All right. There are several reasons. Well, I can't go into that here right now. It's not something that should be said here about your district manager. He tries his best at his job, is all I'll say. But we still don't know. The head of HHC has said, I don't like cars. I like buildings. I like building on parking lots. There are plenty of parking lots at Jacoby. We saw that the Metro North plan plans to build on one side, and right next to building 2 is more parking, which will be built on if that goes through. And in that 7-page document we got, they said 50 people per year will be put into this system. All right. So that means 50 more people every year. So year 2 would be 100, year 3, 150, year 4, 200. All right. We still don't have that answer. How many people will be put there? We also don't know what kind of security. We're hearing that people are going to be free to walk around. And Jacoby itself and other HHC hospitals that are understaffed and overworked are sending people to other city hospitals to get the needed, services. So you could have these people sent from Jacoby over to Harlem Hospital, over to down to on 149th Street. I forgot, Lincoln Hospital, to get these services. So they could be going throughout the Bronx and even into Manhattan, because it was said that they can take the BX12 bus. All right. We still don't know exactly what these people are going to be accused of or have committed. We know that they can only stay in Rikers 1 year unless they're pre-trial. It is not a prison. So that's the problem. We don't still know a lot from HHC. That's the problem. Thank you.
Yeah, and you have to. I just want to clarify something. We were sent hundreds of questions, and I went through every single question and I condensed the questions, because there was no way I was going to send people, these people 100 questions and wait, 3 years for them to get back to us. So I went through every single question that was sent to the board regarding this project, and I did condense it. A lot of them were repeats, and a lot of them just didn't make any sense, and a lot of them were just, outrageous, but, you know, I did go through every single question that was sent to the board, and we did condense it, and that's how we came up with the questions that we sent them. So, but like Richard said, we will look into this and get more information, and we'll have it for you next month.
I know we're reaching the 9 o'clock hour, so my statement is brief, but it's about the Fortune Society. Quickly, their testimony at the public hearing at City Council with regards to banning. It was for intro 6.2, I think 062 or 6.2, with regards to banning criminal background checks. And I listened to all of them, all 5.5 hours. Fortune Society was there, had 2 representatives, and they were supporting it. And every single time when there was a question about a person that they would be thinking of for the permanent housing, how would they didn't use the word vet, but how would they get to know, you know, their background? And all they kept on saying is that all we care about is that they're a human being. And we don't care about anything else, not their background, not their past. And we have service for them. They said it, of course, a bit more eloquently, but that's what they were saying. And when asked more specifics about the medical complexity, and also about if there should have some sort of, you know, criminal background that should be checked out, they just went back on that. Anybody could watch the, you know, the city chambers. I think it was on, I forgot what date it was, but it's something, it was amazing. They gave no specific as to how they choose people. It's just that they have services for them and they're human beings. So they do not want to do any kind of vetting or any background checks. They feel that it's only the complexity of their health issue and nothing else is important to them. While that is a very noble thing, when you're inputting 70 permanent apartments of housing, there should be a little bit more as to who is going in there, since it is going into a residential neighborhood. But they did not really want to respond to any of that. That was their answer. I just wanted that to be known on record.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette.
Sorry, but that's what you wanted to hear. That was not the response. I just want to put that for the record.
Okay, can we move on to old business?
Go ahead.
Any old business? Any new business? I know that Ted wanted to bring up the
Set
joint
up the meeting for land use and housing to meet.
Yeah, I know he wanted to bring that up in new business, but he already brought it up, so.
Yeah.
We'll make a note of that.
Okay, great.
All right, so if that's it, thank you so much, everyone. The meeting is ending at 9:11. As always, I appreciate everybody, you know, coming, and this was a really informative meeting. I appreciate my committee members for being here. And again, I want to wish everybody a happy and healthy new year. Like I said, I hope this year is better than last year. And have a good evening or rest of your evening.
Yep. And thank you again, Hazel, for putting this together. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Very well done. Very well done.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Hazel.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Okay,
All
good
right,
night.
good night.